We're sitting down here with Miss Ashley Walls, the curriculum director at Boaz City School System, for her thoughts on a couple questions that our class is digging deeper into. How do you maintain an integrated curriculum, both horizontally and vertically aligned, that engages all students in rigorous, relevant academic challenges?
Sure. Well, we start with our district focus areas, and we meet as a district team, and we really talk about how to be coherent. Like, okay, guys, what are we really doing to make sure all this fits together in one big puzzle piece? So, like this year, our focus areas, like our big three right now, are literacy. And when I say literacy, it's digital, math, English language arts, anything that makes somebody literate, right? And then we're working on technology integration, which is funny that we've got it separate right now, because you say integration, it should just be in together so it's not isolated. But what we're doing with that is making sure that we're using the tools that we put in the classrooms and that they're working for the kids. I'm not looking to see what the teachers are using, but how the kids use it. And then our third one is really looking at developing our academies at the high school, but then bringing them all the way down to say, okay, how can we talk to our kids at kindergarten level about starting to think about being college or career ready? So then we take that, and then we look at the curriculum and the menu of things that we do. And I always tell them, hey guys, we gotta have a menu. We gotta have a buffet of everything that meets all kids. So like, for example, like yesterday, one of my big decisions was we realized that for our students that are tier 3 or above, so including my special needs students, we realized we really weren't offering them a soft skills curriculum. Well, they need it just like anybody else. So then yesterday I made a purchase to kind of help make sure that they're gonna be able to do that so that there's not a gap for any kid. So then you go, okay, how are we doing that for kindergarten all the way to 12th grade? Well, then you bring the principals in and you bring some school leadership teams in and you say, okay, now let's look at it for kindergarten. Let's look at it for first grade. Let's look at it for second grade. And you constantly look at that. And I talk to mom out of this. I say, okay, I really don't care about anything except tell me what you're teaching those kids and what the skill you're looking for. How do you know how to do it? How do you assess it? And that's what the kids are doing. Like, what's the behavior of the kid? And then how do you evaluate it? Because then that's when we start talking about grading practices. So it all just kind of comes back and fits back together.
You mentioned integration with computer science.
Yep.
Have you guys already planned the new computer science courses, or how did you do that?
We're in the middle of that right now. We actually offered an AP computer science course a couple of years ago, and unfortunately, and y'all probably hear a lot of this, it's hard to keep a really good math teacher. So we lost her to her home school of Aniana. So, and she came in, she taught the course for a year, got her all good and trained up, and we had 9 of 11 kids make a passing score on the AP test. So then we were trying to bridge that class down into the 9th grade, into the middle school, which we've kind of done, but it needs revamping now that we lost her last year. So we're going to have to kind of think about how we're still, I don't want to just offer a course to be offering a course. My thing is how do we use that 7th grade typing course to build into computer science? And then we've got robotics, we've got several project lead the way courses, so we're trying to make it a pathway. But the hard thing with pathways that we're learning is this. Let's say, when your child gets to my school and they're in the 7th grade and they say, Daddy, I want to be an engineer. Okay, what's that look like? Well, there's a bunch of different engineers. It's not just one pathway. So let's say also that Robbie Coker's son plays basketball. So he's got to have 7th period athletics, right? So then that's not offered then. So it's really interesting that we're having to think about how a kid can be on a pathway, get off an exit, get back on a pathway, be an athlete, and get back on this pathway. So that's kind of the hard part right now of designing stuff to meet the needs of the kids and still offer what we're being asked to offer. And computer science is kind of a tough one because we have a lot of kids that want to do they want to be in an engineering pathway, but they want to take a computer science course. So do you just let that be an elective, or do you make them stay on this pathway? Or can they be together? And that's the hard part. Teachers have a real hard time blending them.
No. You can see my son, he's probably going to be a manager.
No, he's not.
How do you lead and motivate teachers to adhere to the prescribed state standards?
State standards. Okay, that's a good question. First of all, just starting to motivate people, I just try to be treat people with respect, and to me that goes a long way. And you treat them like a professional. And I say that to them oftentimes. They're like, hey, when we're talking about state standards and things like that, I'm like, okay, we know what we're here for. You're a teacher. That's because the biggest question I get is, do you want to see my lesson plans? And I get tickled because I'm like, okay, how can you be a teacher without them, right? And now I'm not looking for a specific format or anything like that, but I'm like, you start with your state standards, and that's great, but those are real broad. Like, you can't just say, hey, I'm going to teach, early American literature in the 10th grade. Well, what does that really look like? And again, my question is, what skill is it you want those kids to be able to do and show you to meet that standard? So I make them do all their planning through skills progressions, and that's how we talk in BOAS. It's really not about the standard, because my thing is, if you can show me the skill that meets that, you're going to meet the standard. So it's more of a my husband, who's former football, he says you're always kind of more first and 10 philosophy than I am worried about the end zone. So that's my thing. What can the kid do to meet the standard? And they'll get the standard. And we really talk about behaviors. Like I really push, like instead of, now of course, yes, they have to plan to their course of study. I always tell them that's the first resource. But we look at like the anchor standards, and I really push in math, specifically the standards of mathematical practices, because both of those sets of criteria, and even though they call them standards, are really what I want to see in student behaviors. So like I want to be able to see kids problem solving and reasoning in math, right? Well, if they're doing some of these things, then you're gonna be able to tie that to your standard. So.
How do you monitor and assess instructional programs, activities, and materials?
I do it often. Actually, that's kind of what my dissertation's on. My big thing is when I got this position, I had been an assistant principal in Birmingham. I taught English in Birmingham. Then I moved here and I was an AP. Then I went to be an elementary principal and then back into this position. And in all those transitions, every time I start a job like this, I realized there's no guidance of like what is working and what is not when you get the job. So then you have to go doing all these audits and asking all these questions. So we've really worked on developing a rubric to say, okay, what works, what doesn't, and how do we know? So they kind of call me Elsa, let it go model, because my thing is, when I got here, we had like 7 different reading choices of programs, all doing the same thing. I'm like, why do we need 7? Let's find one that works. And I really like to look at, my philosophy is, and my favorite restaurant is Outback. So I constantly get tickled because I'll say, okay, is this cheese fries or is this a bloomin' onion? And what I mean by that is I want you to think about the kid that needs the most help in your classroom. And so when you go in there and he's been pulled from this teacher and he's pulled from this teacher and he comes back to you for core instruction, are you giving him another strategy he's got to learn? So it's like this bloomin' onion he's got to decipher. Or are you just giving him cheese fries where y'all all make it melt and work together? So I always try to look for, can we let go of things and let's have one program where a kid doesn't have to figure out what he's supposed to be using and he's already struggling. Why make it harder on a kid? So they get tickled off and I go, cheese fries, bloomin' onion. And they're like, oh wait, that's way too many things to going on. Because my thing is, you can buy things all the time, but do you really need to buy things, or do you just need to make one thing work well? So like for us, we have a universal screener. That universal screener, we use the program called, it's the Curriculum Associates called iReady. And it's different than what you'll see a lot of people around here, because a lot of people they'll use this, then they'll use this, and hey, now that's not working, so now we got to give the kid this test. I don't believe that way. I'm a little bit different, and I actually differ from Albertville and Guntersville City, and they're like, I can't believe you do that. But I give my kids that iReady Ready screener for all kids. It's ready reading and math, K through 8, and we're doing it in 9th grade algebra. And we got some things at the high school we're doing. And the kids take the diagnostic 3 times a year. What I love about it is it tells in domains, like specifically to like my children, Harper and Hadley, as a parent. I go, yep, that's my kid for sure. Well, then what happens is then they get blended online instruction, and then the teacher offers instruction and it matches. So like like I tell my teachers, use this like your highly paid online teacher assistant. And then when they go to their SPED classes, or if they go to a tier class, or they go to an intervention class or whatever, they're still using the same thing. So that we're doing the same thing, so the kid don't have to worry about like, okay, well this teacher uses this teacher uses that. Do I have to have this in here? What's my login over here? We try to do one thing. Now again, when it doesn't work, we have to offer them something else, but we try to make sure that it blends well.
Logins, right? I mean, the kid, we spend more time worried about what our login is.
Well, and it's the most needy kids that you end up doing that for. And I'm like, guys, we were trying to grow them. We're not trying to, it's just crazy to me.
What or how do you use diagnostic tools to assess, identify, and support instructional improvement?
Yeah, okay. So like I said, we use iReady. It does the reading and math, and we do it 3 times a year. We just took ours, actually today is the last day for the diagnostic be open, K through 8. And then 9th grade is a little bit longer because we're doing it specifically through algebra. Now at the high school, we assess through ACT.
Sure.
We're still using a little bit of Scantron because this curriculum only goes up through the 8th grade. But what we do, we have the diagnostic. We'll take it now, we'll take it in the January, and we'll take it in late March before the ACAP, which is the state assessment. And what we do is, they'll take it and they're already breaking it down. What I love about it is when it breaks it down for like, let's say my daughter who's a 2nd grader, it will tell me all her reading areas of functions like phonological awareness, fluency, vocabulary, all those areas. Now, like I pulled hers up yesterday. One of her said, hey, she's tested out of that area. She's early second grade here, which she's just going in second grade. So yay, she's ready for second grade. And then there was a couple that said mid first grade. So as a mom, I'm going, okay, let me look at that. Well, then it clicks over here and they have a report that, and this is why I love this, that it pulls and it says, hey, when you're teaching your reading series tomorrow, know this about Hadley. This test says that she has gaps in this lesson. So if you want to know where she is, look here. And then they click again, it goes, hey, by the way, she's already partially mastered this standard. So then, like, it pulls these groups and it'll say, here's an instructional group she may pull. Okay, for one lesson, Hadley may be in the top because she's got that. But you pull the next lesson, Hadley may need some intervention. Well, Hadley's not on any PST report. So that middle of the road and higher level kid too is getting the gap filling they need as well. And that's what I love about it. Because now my Harper, who is Sheldon off the Big Bang Theory, she's gonna land in most of the the other day we looked at one and she can do multiple, she's in fourth grade. She can do anything you give her math wise, but I was looking at hers and she was missing place value. That's a first grade standard. So I went home and I started going, Harper, let's talk about this. She went, I don't know what you're talking about. Now she knew all kinds of stuff, but she couldn't even tell me that. So that's what I want. I want to know what every kid needs help on. So that's what we do.
Awesome. How does infusing technology in the classroom impact or has it impacted the curriculum in your school district?
It does and it doesn't. My thing to me is I hire you, the teacher. The teacher is the tool in the classroom. Now, if you need Google Suites to make your classroom run, awesome, use it. If you need this to make your classroom run, awesome, use it. I don't want to make a teacher feel like, hey, you've got all this stuff and they don't know what to do with it, so then it's like taking 3 steps backwards. If you're really good at talking to kids, then talk to kids and use it where you need it, because guess what? The kids can use it. They know how to use it. But we do talk to our teachers about the SAMR model and like, hey, where are you on this model of integrating technology in your classroom? So like the S is substitution. Like if you are really at that level as a teacher and you don't know anything else to do, instead of having a kid take a note, have them type it and you're just simply substituting. But if you get up here and you're doing some virtual reality stuff, that's awesome. So a teacher, Mike Smith, he's doing some carpentry and some construction work with some kids. So he's trying to take them from real rulers to some online tools. But what he realized, they could do the online tools, but when they went back to use the real ruler, they didn't know how to do it. So, you have to gauge where it's needed. And I'm like, then teach them the ruler. Yeah. So use it where you need it, but it's not a replacement for anybody.
What are the greatest difficulties of your position?
Is keeping current, because when you go working on something, like when you try to, I don't know, like if I start working really hard in the elementary, because I'm K-12 curriculum, so if I spend a whole week in the elementary schools working on phonics progressions, then they're not seeing me at the high school where they may need help with career and college readiness planning. So just trying to make sure that I can stay current with everybody that needs me, that's hard, because I've got to know what everybody's working on. And one thing I'm really trying to do this year is really talk to my principals about what are you working on personally and professionally as a principal, because now they can tell you what their schools are working on. And the other day I went around and said, okay, I just want to know what you're doing this year. What's your PD? Like, what are you focused on? And they're like, oh, no, Ms. Walls, you told me we're going to be doing da-da-da-da. I went, no, not what I told you. What are you doing to be better? And they were like, and they almost got nervous. And I'm like, no, it's not a trick question. What are you doing? So that's kind of my thing. It's really hard, and I try every day. Every week I schedule time in all 5 of the schools. And once a month I meet with instructional partners, which are like reading specialists and people that support in the classrooms. I meet with counselors. I meet with library media specialists once a month, and I meet with my principals once a month. So, and it's on a rotating schedule, and sometimes it might be a Google Hangout, because look, I hate to meet. So I really try to go, okay, what do you need? What do you do current? So what we do is we keep running Google Docs in each of those areas. They give me questions before they ever show up and says, hey, Ms. Walls, these are what we need to know. So when they show up, the meeting agenda is built based off their questions, and I roll it over. They see the agenda, and I'm like, add to it if you need to. Hey, I don't want to waste time up here. Let's get busy. I'd rather you be with the kids. So then that's kind of how we do. But that's the hard part, is making sure I meet everybody's need, because, a kindergarten teacher's need is not a 12th grade teacher's need most of the time. So that's the hard part.
What are the factors that interfere with achieving goals and objectives?
Coherence, keeping everybody knowing the plan and understanding. I mean, your coach, you can draw up the best play, you can coach up that play, you can think they know it inside and out, and then they go back to implement it and you're like, your foot's out of place. Like I've told you 7 times not to put your right foot forward. So it's just that making sure we understand what the plan is and what are the goals and how do you do them. Because, you know, everybody has to write district mission, vision plans, ASIP plans, all these things. And what happens is somebody gets behind his computer, they type them up, and it's not real. My thing all the time is, what are we working on? What is the work is my question all the time. What are we doing? What's the work? Is the work the work? And they get tickled. They're like, man, you say work like 7 times in one sentence. And I'm like, but what are you doing? Because if you're doing this and y'all are working on this, for example, I had a principal this summer. She wanted to send a bunch of teachers to a certain conference that was going to be a lot of fun, and I'm for fun. But I said, but how's that going to make your school better? And she was like, well, it's really just more about motivation and things like that. And it was a lot of her title money. And I'm like, okay, I'm okay with that if you can tie it to some things. So we had to have, and so really she weighed it out and said, you know what, I can make a better choice. I can send them here. And I said, you know what, if they work hard this year, then we might send them to that one as a incentive, you know what I'm saying? But they got to work to something. We're not just going to go to the beach for nothing. That's hard sometimes, because then people are like, well, Miss Walls wouldn't let us go to that conference. Well, it's not really that Miss Walls doesn't want you to go to a conference. Miss Walls wants to know what you're going to do for that kid. That probably, going back to that last question, that's the hardest part of my job. When teachers want to be teacher-centered and not student-focused. And that's hard, because I get caught in that. So I constantly say, guys, I'm not asking this to be ugly, but is what you're telling me student-centered first? And there's a lot of times it's not. Like when you're building master schedules, or when you're like a principal, like at the middle school last year, they were building their master schedule, and I go over all those things with them to make sure all the courses are in there. And I was like, hey, why are we doing this? Why are we offering this course here? And they're like, you know, they're thinking it's a course I just don't want. And I'm like, no. My question is, they hadn't had another, like, they're not ready for that. So why, you know, we got to look at that vertical progression of things. And so then they realized, oh, okay, the teacher wanted to offer because she'd gone to some great conference. I'm like, that's awesome, but let's back up and do it here. So that's not always popular. But, you know, my thing is, if I know I'm doing what's right for my own kids, then that's what I would do. So, and I do that. My kids they are here. So I have to go, now wait, is that the path I want my own personal child to take? And if it's not, then I have to go, put the brakes on. That's always fun.
Thanks for your time. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Good seeing you.
Thank you.
We're closing down this cohort. And this is a challenging part in DeKalb County, and we've got a great learning specialist. But I can tell sometimes when I sit in her meetings that we often have the same struggles. It's good to hear from a different voice and how you guys are facing the problems we're facing.
It is. It's no different than really what you deal with what you deal with. You know what I'm saying? And it's sometimes not fun. You know, when you get people that are like, I've already read that. Well, I need you to read this article one more time. Well, that's not fun to say to people. Adults can be harder than kids.
No doubt. No doubt.
Harder.